if you have had to close your business or you will have to close your business, just remember that there's always other doors that open as soon as one door closes. And if you are going through medical stuff, you have to focus on that. And once you're healthy again, the world is yours.
Welcome back to Exploring Growth and to our CEO series where I'm interviewing CEOs around Central Florida area. Today we have a unique opportunity to look at what it takes to relaunch a business. My guest, Krista Shirley, CEO and founder of the Yoga Shala here in Orlando. She's here to talk to us about her journey of persevering in the face of much adversity. So welcome, Krista.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
It's great. So excited to have you. I'm excited to talk with you because I know that there is someone listening right now that is feeling crushed by the weight of something, right? That's either affecting them in their business or affecting them personally. And I was really excited to talk to you because I think that your story will be an encouragement to them.
Thank you. I hope so. I'll try to make it kind of concise, but I'll start with saying that I am not naturally a business person. I got a degree from Rollins College in anthropology and classical studies, and I stumbled into yoga while I was in college, fell in love with the practice, and then started going to India and Thailand to continue my studies, and really found early on in my life that I really loved yoga and I wanted to share the practice with the world. I really have always been interested in the body and body mechanics and how that works. And after a certain period of teaching, the logical next step really was to open a studio, which I did officially in 2009. And from the jump, it was a little bit of a challenge because the day after I signed the lease for my first space, I found out I was pregnant with my son, who was now 14 years old. But I pushed forward anyway, and I just put one foot in front of the other, especially given that I had no business background. I really built my business as a yoga teacher with a passion for yoga, kind of figuring out how to run a business. And I will tell you that I became very successful doing it that way. And along the way, I got proper mentorship and a lot of help to learn how to run a business. And I loved owning the Yoga Shala, which I ran successfully for many, many years. We were in Winter Park from 2009 until 2016. We moved to College Park where we were until I closed the studio in April of 21. And it wasn't specifically because of COVID. So I'll get a little bit into my story now. 2018, while I was helping my mother who was disabled, she was overweight and she had a stem stroke, which affects her cerebral cortex. So she couldn't use her body. I was trying to get her out of her wheelchair into the car. And she basically pulled me down and pulled my shoulder. So it ripped my supraspinatus tendon off the bone. I did a lot of PRP, prolotherapy, physical therapy, and eventually chose to go with a very basic arthroscopic shoulder surgery. Unfortunately, that surgery gave me a nasty infection, almost killed me. And I did a revision surgery in Colorado with one of the best surgeons in the nation for shoulders and scapula. And unfortunately, that surgery, my suprascapular nerve was severed. And the suprascapular nerve powers 2 of your 4 rotator cuff muscles. So I was left very disabled. I wasn't able to use my limb at all. And it was a long journey. I ended up undergoing quite a few surgeries, the last of which was a nerve transfer that took away even more function. They took out the muscle of my trapezius to try to reinnervate my shoulder. I had to wait an entire year to see if that worked, and it didn't. So in April of 2021, we did the nerve conduction study that had been exactly a year. And my nerves had not regenerated, and I lost my trapezius in addition to my supra and infraspinatus. And every doctor basically said, really sorry, get on disability and good luck with your life.
Yeah.
And, I still to this day kind of kick myself for many choices and decisions I made along the way. One of which was, in my mind, from late 2019 until April of 2021, in the midst of COVID and everything, I kept the business alive. I got into a lot of debt, thinking in my mind, as soon as I get my body back, as soon as I get my function back, I can rebuild this business. I know I can. And then I came up to a wall, and the wall basically said, you have to stop. But I remember very poignantly at that moment in time when all those doctors told me, your option is disability and just learning how to live with your dysfunction. And I remember thinking, that is not the option I'm choosing. Mm-hmm. So even when I closed my business, I had no idea what was next. And I will say in transparency that I sort of convinced myself I would never reopen a studio. I think I did that more because I needed to grieve the loss of my studio. It was like a child. It was like a person
Sure.
to me.
Sure.
But I spent the year of 2021 literally doing every kind of outside the box body mechanic, anything I could find, trying to find the most off the wall PTs you could think of. And I was lucky I did end up finding somebody who was willing to sort of work with me in a different way, because unfortunately, physical therapy doesn't really work with neurological issues. Occupational therapists do, but they really work with very traumatic situations. So because I could get my clothes on and I could feed myself, they were like, we really can't help you. So
Yeah.
long story short with that, I eventually got to a point where I had enough function. I was rebuilding my personal yoga practice and figuring out what I was going to do next. And I did start teaching a little bit of yoga again. And from a little bit of yoga, just it organically evolved to teaching more yoga. And then my mom actually passed away in June of 2022. And right after she passed away, I felt her energy. I felt something, and it was like, okay, it's time to start teaching a daily morning yoga program again, which is something I didn't even know how much I missed. And I spent a year and a half literally renting time out of a studio, partly because there was no way physically I could open a studio. But again, I didn't think I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And fast forward over that last year and a half, my programs have grown, my private clients have grown, everything has really evolved again, as well as my continuous recovery of function. And so it became a very logistical solution to have my own space again. And that was another hard choice to make, because it was sort of in my mind, I was like, I don't know if I can do this again. I don't know if I can do this again. And there were a lot of things, as anybody listening, if you have a business or have had one in the past, you look back and you're like, gosh, I really would have done that differently. And so
Right.
there were so many things from my past experience owning a business that I was like, I just don't want to own a business again. But then when I was presented with an opportunity, when I outgrew the space we were using, and the only two options were to literally rent time again out of a space, but to basically it was going to be as expensive as paying rent.
Mm-hmm.
I sat with myself and I said, okay, if I really try to do this again, how can I do it differently and do it all the ways that I want to be successful, but also not all the ways I didn't enjoy about my business in the past? And I sat with myself really making notes about how to make that possible.
Okay,
And
so before you get to that, let's go back a couple steps, because I'm really interested in. I think it was 2021. You said you hit a wall.
yes.
What was that wall? Was it an emotional wall? Was it just the physical, toll that it's taken on you, or
It was a
what
little
was
bit
it?
of everything. So before the nerve conduction study in April, my studio was still open, but from whenever March of 2020, when they put the restrictions and closed businesses down in Florida, and then when we reopened in May or June, my yoga studio is even more specialized than most in that we're very hands-on, lots of adjustments, and we really, really focus on a very specific deep breathing with sound. So as you can imagine, with COVID, nobody wanted to be close to each other, nobody wanted to be touched, and nobody wanted other people breathing close to them or
Right.
loudly close to them. So we were open, but we were dead. And that existed anyway. But like I said, when I thought if the nerve study says my nerves will come back, then I'm gonna make this happen. And
Mm-hmm.
when the nerve conduction study said nothing has come back, you've lost your mid and lower trap, your infraspinatus, supraspinatus never came back, I definitely hit a mental wall of like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I was still very, very disabled. Literally, my limb kind of hung by my side. I could not lift my arm at all. And I was in a lot of pain, and I did some pain management for a while, but it was more of a mental wall than anything. But physically, I was incapable of running my own business fully by myself. And it was a very scary place. But I also want to just backtrack and say that during COVID, while my studio was open, I kept getting in my ear, every friend, family, person that loved me, what are you going to do now that you can't teach yoga?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very strange place for me, because I felt like I was a little bit crazy. I was like, stop talking like that. What are you talking about? Of course I'm going to get my body back. I'm not changing my career. But at the same time, that little pieces of me were trying to make moves. So for example, I self-trained myself how to do audio narration. And during the entirety of COVID, I narrated audiobooks. And so I was able to teach myself, okay, Krista, even though you're almost 40 and you're kind of disabled, like you can make something happen. You can learn new skills. And so when April of 21 came, I wasn't incredibly forlorn. I was definitely sad and disappointed, but I thought, okay, I need to look ahead. I need to figure out how I'm going to like build my life again, build a career again. Yoga's gone. Not that personal yoga was gone, but maybe forever teaching was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I did walk away from it for a while. I went and worked at Universal Studios for about 6 months. And I kept some private clients throughout that time, but I actually didn't want to teach for a long time because I think emotionally it was hard for me. It was hard for me to talk people through practices that I couldn't physically even do myself.
Right.
So I hope that answers that a little bit.
Yeah, it does. And I think one of the themes that I'm pulling out is just the passion that you have for this discipline.
Yeah,
And I think that in addition to that, I would say what stands out to me is that you have a true entrepreneurial spirit, and that is one of tenacity, one of discipline, one of fortitude, perseverance. Even stepping back and have patience at some point when it's necessary. You've been through a lot and still have the sort of gumption to get up and say, I'm going to look at doing this again. But it's rooted in that passion. And I think that's where I think your story, the message to whomever's listening to this, going through something right now, even especially medical, because medical is such a, it's almost sort of like, what is happening to me, type of thing. And it can really tank you emotionally and mentally. And it pulls you away from the things that you are passionate about, the things you're doing well in your business. But I think people hearing that story and connecting to it is important, because there are people going through, negative life circumstances. We all always have something that we're either, as they say, going into, or coming out of.
exactly.
This is how life is. So I think it's very admirable and also encouraging to see that there is a light on the other side. If you're in a dark place right now, you might just need to take a step back and look at everything, because your story ends, is that part of your story is ending really well, where you're coming back to the passion and with a renewed spirit, and you have something new to give. So I think that's amazing.
Thank you. And I want to add to actually to coming back for anybody out there who has had to close your business for any reason. If you ever get the desire to kind of re-enter your business or start over, I just can't encourage you enough to really push through with that passion, because I'm going to get emotional. It's worth every second of it. And
Mhm.
I'm going to turn around so you guys can see my scars a little bit. So I'm
Oh yeah.
missing my supraspinatus here, my infraspinatus here, which does external rotation I don't have.
Now,
And
for the layperson, what does that mean?
I'm sorry.
For the layperson, what is that
Yeah,
medical term?
so your supraspinatus that I'm missing on this side assists with any lifting of your arm, the first 15 degrees.
Okay.
Your infraspinatus is right about here, and anytime you externally rotate your arm, or for example, this position, I can't
Mhm.
do this on this side, and then your mid trap is this muscle right here, and your lower trap is this portion of the muscle. See, you can see my rhomboid here, but I don't have a mid or lower trap on this side now.
Right. Yeah.
And what's very cool is the body is really cool. And I want
Yes.
to make a couple comments. And it's whether or not you're dealing with something that's medical or something completely different. I just want to say that the process that I went through was like a 2-year process of just complete fortitude, like not willing to give up and trying everything. I have not only learned so much more about the anatomy of the human body and all of that, but I've gained so much more inner perspective of humanity, truthfully. And I wish that this had never happened. But now that I'm back into my career, I have a whole different perspective. And I actually, most of my clients, I wouldn't say most of them, I specialize now in working with people with chronic musculoskeletal or neurological issues. Now I work with tons of people who are normal and have no problems, which is
Yeah.
great. But I find the most gratification in working with people that I can truly help through a situation somewhat similar to mine. So I just want to, again, anybody out there listening, know that what you've gone through, what you're going through is never not for nothing.
Yeah.
And I feel that more than ever before. And it's actually given me a lot of strength and inspiration and the gusto to move forward. That's another reason I wanted to have a space when it became really obvious that I needed to do something different than what I was doing. I wanted to create a bigger space for anybody in Central Florida to know that there's hope, because I can't tell you, just like you had said, I've had clients I can think of a gentleman right now. He's in his late 60s, early 70s, very, very successful human being with his business. And then he got diagnosed with cancer and a number of other things. And just even the mental aspect alone, I remember vividly him crying and saying, I worked so hard throughout my entire life to be able to enjoy these years of my life. And now I can't enjoy them. I'm in so much pain, and my life is consumed by my medical care. The only thing I was able to give him was a little perspective. I couldn't fix his cancer, but I was able to give him just a little bit of perspective. And I will tell you that once you're removed a year, even 2 years from closing your business, I hope that perspective that you can have and how you look at the business you ran before and potentially running again is gratifying to you,
Mm-hmm.
because I do think it's incredibly hard to run a business. I don't know the statistics, but I do know that many small businesses close very quickly after they open. And
Mm-hmm.
I just encourage everyone watching the podcast today to know that if you have a passion for something, please try again, because the
Yes.
second time is even better than the first. And I always remember when I was younger, I remember hearing, oh, these millionaires who, made tons of money and lost it all, but they could rebuild it because they knew how to. And I thought, well, that's a really novel idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so novel. We can all do it. If you've created your business, even to some level of success in the beginning, you can do it again, even better the second time around. And I literally had my grand opening last Saturday, and I won't say I'm scared by any means, but I mean, I am literally starting over.
Mm-hmm.
And I have taken out a lot of personal funds to try to make this business successful. And while it could fail, in my mind, I know it's going to succeed. And in my mind, I just think 6-month targets and 12-month targets, and just really be patient and continue pushing forth with my passion. So
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great message, because especially back to someone who's not just starting a business to make money, I don't think that's really who you're speaking to. You're speaking to someone who has a passion that
yeah.
wants to express it through a business. I think starting over allows you to re-enter that passion with a new vigor, new energy, but also with that new clear perspective, which allows you to help your, if you're pretty, having a service, which a lot of people do, it allows you to help those customers and clients and patients maybe in a wholly new way, where you're now more connected with the end result. And I think that's what makes people so much more um, ultimately successful in their business, because they're attached to it in a different way.
Hmm.
I love
Absolutely.
that. And what's cool about it from a for profit standpoint, if you just start looking at the numbers, thinking back to what you were saying earlier, you were saying that you went to occupational therapist and physical therapy, and they have boxes, right, that they can put you in, and
Hmm.
those boxes work by and large for what people are dealing
Right.
with. But when you don't fall in one of those boxes, well, it gets kind of difficult. You now have to kind of navigate that solely on your own, or find that path yourself. And what's so interesting about your business now, that you're reconnected in a new way, you can exist to serve those people that are in that gray area. And so I don't know, my mind starts to go to, ways to make money. And I start to think, well, insurances would probably pay for somebody who falls in the gray area. They just have to be educated on how it works. Because there's probably more than just you out there that needs these type of services.
Oh no, and that has been another very eye-opening experience for me. I went to Miami in May of last year to see my yoga teacher who lives in India. I've not been back to India since 2018 because
Mm-hmm.
of my nerve damage. But I met two advanced yoga students like myself who both had different nerve issues that they were dealing with. Now, thank goodness for them, their injuries were quickly healed. They weren't long-term injuries, but it was just eye-opening to me to see, even in my small yoga world, because Ashtanga yoga, the type of yoga I practice particularly, is a very small type of yoga, and really opened my eyes to how many people are struggling with neurological conditions, forget musculoskeletal conditions. But
Mm-hmm.
going to your point, and I love the word that you use, boxes, because that's exactly how I
Yeah.
describe it to people. So many people don't fit into the boxes of this traditional therapy route that we have currently in our country. And I actually, again, a very vigorous excitement from me. I've created a class called Rehabilitative Body Mechanics. I taught the first one today at 9:15, actually.
Nice.
And I've designed
Congrats.
it really specifically for people with chronic musculoskeletal and neurological issues. I am
Okay.
not a doctor, But what we do in that class is basically I'm helping students learn how to proprioceptively retrain their body, how to work with small movements to eventually increase their mobility and address certain issues. And it will evolve over time, but it is a true passion of mine. When I was prior to my nerve damage, in the Ashtanga world, I'm an authorized level 2 authorized teacher. There's a couple hundred of us in the world, and I had a very, very advanced yoga practice. And so I tended to have a lot of students travel into Orlando from all over the country and the world to study with me. That doesn't really happen anymore. But that's okay with me. Again, things have shifted. I can still teach advanced students yoga, but I want to really help people who are struggling with physical issues. So my passion, I'm still passionate about Ashtanga, but my passion around health and wellness has really changed in terms of what I want to share and give and do for people in the world. And I feel very honored because I know that it is a gaping hole. There is nothing out there.
Sure.
So yeah, and again, I'm going to preface that I'm not a business person, but my motto used to be, when I first opened my studio years and years ago, I was pregnant with my son when the doors opened. I don't know if anybody out there listening has ever seen the movie Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner. My mom loved it. I used to watch a lot when I was little. And so I would stand in an empty yoga room day after day, maybe one student, maybe two students for months. And I would just, in my mind, if they build it, they will come. If you build it, they will come.
That's right.
And I swear to you, within 6 months, I had a flourishing studio. And I don't know how I got there. I just, every day, one foot in front of the other. And I am trying a little bit more of a marketing strategy this time, but I'll be honest, it's still kind of that way. And I think the more passionate you are about your business, maybe the more you can live that way.
For sure.
But I'm really, really grateful and honored to be able to learn from this experience and then help other people in my practice and my teachings with that as well.
That's awesome. Let's dig into your business just a little bit and talk about, okay, you have this new set of clientele that you're going to be serving. What would keep someone engaged for the long term? Like for the long term, we look at retention, right, as a business owner. So why would they continue to come back?
I will say with my type of business is a very service-based business. We are a small business, a smaller studio. It's about nurturing clients and building community. I mean, those are the two key markers for my success in my business. And I also say I've spent tons of money on advertising through the years. The greatest form of new clients is word of mouth. So when people really love us, they rave about us and they bring their clients in. And the grand opening was a great example of that for me personally. I do a lot of giving back to clients. I offer a lot of discounts for existing clients. I make sure to acknowledge their birthdays and special anniversaries. I try very hard with any clients that come to my classes personally to get to know them and understand their life a little bit so that every time I see them, I can ask them something that will make them feel good. How's your mom doing? She's been in the hospital or whatever. And then one thing that one of my students, actually many of my students have now told me, it was always a habit of mine. I teach a yoga program Monday through Friday. And at the end of every day, somebody leaves and I say, have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. And I've been told now over and over again that just made them feel so good. And so what's the word I'm looking for? Not obligated to come back tomorrow, but like accountability.
Sure.
So I also, and I don't, not just through that, in other ways, I create accountability for clients and not in a pushy way, but trying to always hold them accountable. One of my mission statements, my previous studio, I've changed my mission statement a little bit, but was to help people in Central Florida take accountability of their own health and wellness. And I used to say through the vehicle of Ashtanga yoga. That's changed a little bit now, but my mission hasn't changed at all. I mean, even my own case, there were moments through my medical journey that I felt like a victim, which is a horrible feeling to have. But every time I would feel that way, I would try to pull myself out of it and say, no, you picked that doctor, you said yes to the surgery, or you did this, or you did that. And now nobody's here to help you. So you have to help yourself. And so I try really hard to, in a loving way, create accountability for the client. And then it's up to them. I'm like, you just have to show up. Like once you get here, the hard part's over. But I will, again, the community. So for example, and something that we're going to start adding again is monthly potluck. So once a month, we'll hold a potluck where people will bring in a dish and we just hang out.
I like that. Yeah.
We do things called movies on the mat. So that's anything and everything that I can do to create community, support community, build relationships, support those relationships, and ultimately make them feel like they're part of the studio and more than just being a client or a member, but truly part of this beautiful community. So I would say from my business, those are the things that I do to help people stay engaged and stay connected. And I will just
I
also add
like that.
that if students disappear for a little while, I do a reach out as well. I try to make
That's
sure they
good.
always feel connected.
Like, hey, where have you been?
Yeah. Yes.
We missed you at the last potluck.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I like that approach because it's very, human. It's very relationship oriented, keeps people connected. I think the specificity of what you're doing now, in the nature of the type of yoga that you're doing, is really key to stickiness in your business because I think it's also key to growing your clientele as well because people who have acute type of injuries or medical conditions, they will love to meet someone else who has something similar so that they have that connection, that bond. And so I think that the bond really that you're playing into is a great approach because they're going to find other people out there and talking, friends, family, colleagues, and they're going to invite them in. And then when they're there, they're all bonding over this healing kind of experience. It's such a great place to sort of like a great platform for everyone to come together.
Exactly. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So now, the exciting part, what are your future plans for growth?
Well, we officially opened on Saturday of this past week.
Mhm.
So I will say my first year goals are really just to support that. Let me back up. I have other teachers on staff. And as I said, I teach Ashtanga yoga, but we do it in what's called a MISO program. So it's very specialized. And then
Mhm.
I've added new classes as well personally, but I've got a bunch of teachers on staff. And so my first biggest goal is to really support that staff and assist them in growing their classes and their
Mhm.
programs. Also, rebuilding the community that we had in our previous space because it's been several years since the studio was open. So the first year is trying to really establish and rebuild community, establish and rebuild a process, if you will, that's flowing.
Mhm.
So for even just for new students, for example, it's something new that I'm doing. First class is free for new students. And I'm trying to create a little bit of a funnel system for the teachers to help once they finish their first class, what next steps. Again, these are all new things. We have a brand
Sure.
new website, brand new software, all the things. So the first year is kind of rebuilding, figuring out what
Yeah.
works, what doesn't, and then get it to turn into a fine-tuned machine.
Yes.
And second year goals. Before my nerve damage, I did own my studio in Central Florida, but I also taught workshops all over the world in the country.
Mhm.
And I taught a lot of retreats every year internationally. And for 2025, it may be overzealous in the beginning. I would still very much be at my studio, but I want to try to bring back some more national workshops. I do teach a few of them. More national workshops, more travel for me if the studio can kind of sustain itself to some
Mhm.
degree, which will require training of certain teachers for the type of stuff that I teach. And so
Mhm.
there's a lot of different things in place, which isn't necessarily growth on the dollar amount level at this point, but plans to create more revenue streams and a little bit more freedom for me to move around the country and the world, but also building more programs. We're starting right now. We've got a good number of classes on the schedule, but I would really like by the end of this year to pretty much max out the opportunities for classes on the group schedule. I am usually very full with private clients, but also getting the staff to have opportunities and clients to work with privately and get the staff to do more workshops because I am offering workshops in my studio and I've been offering workshops in Central Florida since I started teaching again, but kind of really give the teachers that are on staff the opportunity to start shining and taking on more projects, if you will.
Yeah, I love that. You're talking about bringing on new people, building programs. It takes me back to the occupational therapist and the physical therapist. How much overlap, or is there any overlap with people who are trained and degreed in those areas and that actually enjoy yoga?
So I'm smiling when you say that because one of my friends and yoga students, her name is Gabriella. She is a physical therapist. She has a PhD in physical therapy. She had done my apprenticeship or teacher training program, I don't remember, 2016 or 2017. And she taught for me at my old studio. And she's teaching for me again. She starts her first class tonight. So she works full time as a physical therapist. She's very passionate about yoga. How much of an overlap is there? I don't think there's that much of one, to be honest with you, but it does exist, and it's really, really, really cool to see when it
Mhm.
happens. Um, Almost every physical therapist that I've ever experienced has not had any background in yoga and works within very, very stringent perimeters of what they're willing to do or try with a client. And I think Gabriella, for example, I think even in her practice of physical therapy is more willing to think outside the box, which I'm sure has a lot to do with all the things in her life, but I think the yoga helps a lot.
Sure.
And I don't ever wish to downplay any physical therapist. They do a wonderful work for many people.
Mhm.
I found with my particular condition, they were not helpful for me very much.
Mhm.
And because of that, it really makes me question, how can there be a program created or a degree created that can work with us very small gray area people? And it is such a small number. I don't know if it's really worth it when you look at money and all those things. But I hope that one day I can try to help build some kind of a gap to see if the occupational therapy world or physical therapy world will expand what they're willing to do with people or how they're
Mhm.
willing to help people.
Yeah, I agree. I think there has to be space for that. The future is bright for what you're doing. I think because I look at the traditional medical world, and I think everybody, it's kind of in our face now, and that these boxes that they've created, they break down pretty quickly, and that system is due for an overhaul. But in the meantime, I think people are looking for all kinds of alternative ways to get healthy and stay healthy, and whether that's nutrition or moving your body or workouts, whatever it may be. I see businesses popping up all over the place, both bespoke, type of very hands-on and very niche market type of services, but also those that are scaling and growing and franchising.
Mhm.
Um, it's just people are looking for something outside of traditional medicine because they're not getting all the answers that they need. So it'll be interesting to see where your business goes. I think the future is bright.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks again for being on. I appreciate you sharing your story. I know it has to encourage at least one person that's listening because we all go through stuff, and going through medical trials is probably the worst because you have this sort of black cloud that's above you all the time when you're just trying to, live out your work and serve people. So thanks for sharing that.
No, I'm so grateful. I'm really, really grateful to be on the show. And I really hope for anybody out there, please just never give up on yourself. I remember the crux of the hardest point of this time for me. I think it was hard to think clearly because of my medical stuff, but I just kept thinking about my business and how I was failing and how I was letting so many people down. And I will tell you, I carried that burden with me for a couple of years and it didn't help me.
Hmm.
So I just want to leave with one piece of advice, and that is if you have had to close your business or you will have to close your business, just remember that there's always other doors that open as soon as one door closes. And if you are going through medical stuff, you have to focus on that. And
Hmm.
once you're healthy again, the world is yours. You can do whatever you want. You could start
That's
over.
right.
You could do something completely different. And I just wish everybody the best.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. If I want to send people to you, where should we send them?
Please check out the yogashala.com. That's TheYogashala.com, or just go to doyoga.org and it'll take you to our website.
It's great. Thanks so much, Krista.
Thank you.